HOA. I never thought I would be caught up in a battle with an organization like this. Just because of a car parked in my own driveway, I became the target of Karen Brown, who self-appointed herself as the guardian of this neighborhood. Unreasonable rules, false accusations, and demands with no valid reason turned my life into an endless chain of frustration. As a police officer, I've faced countless tense situations, but I never imagined I'd have to fight with people in my own neighborhood, all because one woman couldn't accept her authority being challenged. If you're interested in dramatic stories about power, corruption, and the battle to protect the community, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any updates. It was just another quiet morning, but for me, the chaos was about to begin. I was sitting on my porch, enjoying a cup of coffee, when I heard the faint sound of sirens in the distance. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then my police scanner crackled to life, and I heard the words, "dangerous trespasser," coming from a nearby neighborhood. Curious, I stepped outside just in time to see the patrol cars pulling up. As they parked, two officers got out and looked around for the so-called trespasser. And there she was, Karen Brown, the self-proclaimed HOA queen. She stood there, pointing her finger at me like she was about to deliver some great revelation. "That's him," she shouted. "Arrest him for trespassing. He's parked in the driveway like he owns the place." I couldn't help but let out a low chuckle. Karen had called the police on me, accusing me of trespassing on my own property. Yes, you heard that right. My own property. The officers turned to each other, confused. One of them tried to suppress a laugh, but couldn't. "Wait, this trespasser is Officer Michael Walker?" he asked, trying to keep a straight face. I folded my arms, enjoying the scene unfolding in front of me. "That's right," I said. "And guess what? I own this place." Karen's face twisted in outrage. No, this driveway is for HOA-approved vehicles only. You can't park that police cruiser here." I smirked. "This property is mine, not part of your HOA, Karen." Karen was having none of it. "It should be. You don't belong here, and your car doesn't belong here either. It's a violation of HOA standards." The officer rubbed his temples, clearly trying to keep his cool. "Ma'am, you can't just call 911 because you don't like someone's car in their own driveway." Karen gasped as if the very idea was a personal insult. "Excuse me? Are you refusing to uphold the law? This is a crime." The other officer shook his head. "No, ma'am, it's not a crime, but filing a false police report is." That was the moment Karen's pride started to crack. She looked around, realizing that the neighbors were now peeking through their windows, watching the drama unfold. But instead of backing down, she doubled down, trying to make her case even more ridiculous. "I don't care what you say. That car is a violation of HOA policy. No official vehicles can be parked here," she practically screamed, her face red with rage. I raised an eyebrow. I never agreed to those rules. Karen's eye twitched. "That's because you're not part of the HOA. But it doesn't matter. You should follow the rules anyway." I let out a sarcastic laugh. "Exactly. So your rules don't apply to me. Glad we could clear that up." The officers exchanged a glance, one of them snickering. "I think we're done here," he said, walking away. Karen was not going to give up so easily. She pointed at me one last time. "This isn't over, Michael. Mark my words." I took another sip of my coffee, a smirk still on my face. "Oh, I'm sure it's not. This is just too good to be over." The officers warned Karen one last time about filing false reports, but they left without arresting anyone. As they drove off, I just stood there, shaking my head. Only Karen could turn a peaceful neighborhood into a battleground over a police cruiser parked in its rightful place. Karen stormed off, muttering threats under her breath. "This isn't over," she kept saying. I knew she wasn't going to stop, and honestly, I wasn't about to let her. It didn't take long for the drama to continue. Just an hour after Karen made a fool of herself, I was sitting on my porch, enjoying the peace of a quiet neighborhood again, when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of an email alert. Sure enough, my inbox was flooded with more of Karen's nonsense. "Urgent HOA policy enforcement," the subject line read. I clicked it, and sure enough, there she was again, trying to take control of my life in the most absurd way possible. The email was a demand that all law enforcement vehicles be parked out of sight. In her mind, my police cruiser was a violation of the HOA's aesthetic standards. I almost spat out my coffee. Are you seriously kidding me right now? I muttered under my breath. Karen was officially escalating this ridiculous war, and I couldn't help but laugh at how far she was willing to go. Was she really so obsessed with her precious HOA that she thought she could start enforcing rules that didn't even apply to me? The woman had zero self-awareness, and at this point, I was just waiting to see how much further she would dig herself into this hole. By noon, my phone buzzed with a message from a fellow officer. It was from Sergeant Lee, who had clearly heard about the chaos already. Hey, did you see Karen's latest email? She's trying to ban police vehicles from the neighborhood. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Oh, I saw it right. She's lost it. Sure enough, Karen's email had been sent to everyone in the neighborhood, warning them that the sight of any official vehicles on their private property was a direct violation of their precious HOA rules. It was laughable, really, as if the neighborhood was a freaking gated community and I was some kind of criminal for being a cop. That's when the next step of her insane plan unfolded. She filed another fake complaint, this time to the city, about a supposed zoning violation. She claimed that my police cruiser was a commercial vehicle, and since it wasn't parked in my garage, it was somehow disrupting the neighborhood. The audacity of this woman. She was turning the simplest of things into a crisis, and now she had taken it to a whole new level by dragging the city into her ridiculous vendetta. I decided it was time to do what I do best. Deal with this nonsense head on. I grabbed my phone and called code enforcement. I needed to shut Karen down before she spiraled even further out of control. Code enforcement, a gruff voice answered. I didn't waste time. Yeah, this is Officer Michael Walker. I have an HOA president here trying to enforce an illegal vehicle ban on public streets. Can you send someone down to investigate? The man on the other end paused for a moment before letting out a sigh. You're kidding, right? You're telling me this Karen person is trying to ban police vehicles from the streets. I couldn't help but laugh. Unfortunately, no joke. She's lost her mind. Within the hour, a city inspector, Tom, showed up at the HOA office. I watched from across the street as he walked in, clearly already annoyed by whatever nonsense he was about to face. I could almost hear Karen's shrill voice as Tom walked in and began reviewing her absurd request. Well, I said to myself, this should be fun. I grabbed a lawn chair and set it up on the sidewalk to enjoy the show. Karen was about to get a dose of reality. Minutes later, Tom came out of the office looking absolutely exasperated. He was holding a thick folder, and I could see Karen's face had gone pale. Ma'am, are you out of your mind? Tom asked, his voice heavy with disbelief. Karen blinked, looking like a deer caught in headlights. What do you mean? I'm just trying to uphold the neighborhood standards. Tom rolled his eyes. You can't just go around banning emergency vehicles from public roads. This is not only illegal, but it's also a waste of taxpayer money. You're violating city code. I couldn't stop myself from grinning. This was about to get good. Karen's face turned beet red. She tried to argue, but Tom wasn't having any of it. You're making a mockery of the HOA. I've dealt with a lot of HOA presidents in my time, but you might just be the worst. I watched as Karen tried to hold on to some form of dignity, but it was slipping fast. Tom handed her a formal citation, and with that, her credibility in the eyes of the neighborhood had evaporated. She had no power left. Congratulations, Karen, I said under my breath. You've officially messed with the wrong guy. As Tom walked out, he gave me a nod, a slight smirk on his face. I'll be keeping an eye on her. Don't worry, this isn't over yet. I leaned back in my chair, content. Karen had made the biggest mistake of her life. And honestly, I was enjoying every second of it. At this point, I knew Karen was never going to stop. The moment I thought she might have learned her lesson, she only escalated the situation further. I could already feel the tension building in the air. There was no way she would let me live in peace. And I wasn't wrong. The next day, my inbox flooded again, this time with more of Karen's nonsense. She had launched a full-scale war against me, and now she was using every tool at her disposal to make my life hell. This time, She sent out an HOA-wide email to the entire neighborhood. It wasn't just a simple complaint anymore. No, this was an attack. Attention Fairview Estates residents, the email began. It has come to our attention that a police vehicle owned by Officer Michael Walker continues to park in plain sight in violation of our HOA rules. This is an unsightly violation and must be dealt with immediately. If you have any concerns or have seen other vehicles parked in violation, please report them. My blood started to boil. Was she seriously trying to turn the whole neighborhood against me now? This was it. She was actively stirring up trouble, trying to turn everyone in the area into her minions. I took a deep breath, trying not to lose my cool, but I was done with the nonsense. I grabbed my phone and fired off a quick text to Sergeant Lee. Looks like Karen's taking it to the next level. She's trying to get everyone involved in her little vendetta. Thought you might want to know. Sergeant Lee responded with a simple, "What's she doing now?" I shook my head. She's emailing the whole neighborhood, stirring up drama about my police cruiser. Now everyone's going to think I'm violating some non-existent rule. I could practically hear Lee eye roll through the text. Typical Karen. Just wait. She'll trip herself up soon enough. But I wasn't willing to sit back and wait. No, I had to deal with this directly. I wasn't going to let her poison the whole neighborhood with her insane rules. I decided it was time to step up and handle this once and for all. I walked over to the HOA office, knowing Karen would probably be there, ready to try and fight me with her latest batch of ridiculous rules. As soon as I entered the office, there she was, sitting behind her desk, acting like she was the queen of the world. "Michael," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I assume you've seen the email? I'm just trying to protect the neighborhood, you know?" I could barely contain my sarcasm. "Oh, I've seen it. And I have to say, Karen, I'm really impressed with how far you'll go to make your life miserable, and mine, apparently." She glared at me, her expression a mix of rage and disbelief. "You don't understand. You can't just park your police vehicle here. It's against the rules." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "Karen, the only rule here is your obsession with controlling everything. This is my property. And by the way, my cruiser stays here. Get used to it." Her eyes widened, her nostrils flaring. "You're just trying to make a mockery of the HOA. I won't let you get away with this." I laughed, almost feeling sorry for her at this point. "You really think you're going to get away with this? You've already lost. Everyone knows what you're doing, and you're only making yourself look like an idiot." But Karen wasn't backing down. "I have every right to enforce HOA rules. You can't just park a police car here like it's some kind of statement." "Really? Tell me, Karen," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "When did you become the enforcer of the law? This is a public neighborhood, not your personal kingdom." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she fumed and slammed her hands down on her desk. "You'll regret this. The whole neighborhood's on my side." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? Because last time I checked, no one was rushing to defend you. In fact, people are starting to see you for what you are, a power-hungry tyrant who's obsessed with controlling everything." Karen's face went pale, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She wasn't used to being called out like this. "People are going to start turning on you, Karen. You're going to end up isolated, and when that happens, I'm not going to be the one left holding the bag for your insanity." Karen's voice trembled with fury. "You'll regret this. You think you've won? This isn't over. I'm going to make sure you pay for disrespecting me." I smirked. "Trust me, Karen. The only person you're hurting is yourself. The more you try to drag this out, the more people are going to see you for the joke you really are." As I walked out of the office, I couldn't help but feel a rush of satisfaction. Karen's act was falling apart, and she didn't even realize it yet. She was too blinded by her own arrogance to see how much damage she was doing to her own reputation. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Karen wasn't the type to just give up, and I wasn't the type to back down. If she wanted to fight, she was going to get one. At this point, I was starting to feel like I was in the middle of some bad reality TV show. Only the drama wasn't scripted, and I wasn't enjoying it. I'd already dealt with Karen's fake complaints and ridiculous demands. I'd already shut her down in front of the officers, but Karen wasn't done. She had made it clear that this was a personal war, and she wasn't going to back down. She was just getting started. I should have known better. This woman didn't have an ounce of sense, and after I left her office that day, she went straight to work, trying to drag the whole neighborhood into her mess. And the worst part? She was succeeding. By the time I got home, the email notifications started flooding my inbox. Another email from Karen. I muttered to myself. I already knew what it was going to say. She had sent out a whole new wave of complaints, this time claiming that my police cruiser was bringing down property values in the neighborhood, as if my car was the one causing people to lose interest in their homes. I shook my head. Unbelievable. Apparently, Karen had mobilized the HOA minions. Emails flooded in from concerned neighbors, all parroting her nonsense. Michael's car is intimidating, one of them claimed. It's making the neighborhood feel unsafe, another said. I couldn't help but laugh. It was hard to take any of this seriously when it was so obvious that Karen had twisted everyone's mind into thinking my police cruiser was somehow a threat to their suburban lives. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, it did. I went out to check my mailbox and found something shoved inside. Another HOA violation notice from Karen. The note read, "Violation, unauthorized vehicle storage. Police vehicles are considered commercial property and may not be stored in residential driveways overnight." I opened it up and stared at it in disbelief. Was this woman really this petty? Was she really going to try and tell me that my police cruiser, a government vehicle, was some kind of violation? I had to read it twice just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. Are you kidding me? I muttered to myself. I picked up the phone and texted Lee again. You won't believe this. Karen's sending out violation notices about my police cruiser again. This is getting out of hand. Lee responded almost immediately. Man, this is just getting pathetic now. She really doesn't get the message, does she? I laughed bitterly. Nope. And she's not going to stop until she burns this whole place down. But I wasn't about to let her have the last word. I was done playing nice, and I wasn't going to let her drag my name through the mud any longer. I decided to take action. I grabbed my phone, found a city inspector's contact number, and called them. I was done dealing with this nonsense on my own. Code enforcement, a gruff voice answered. I didn't waste time. Yeah, this is Officer Michael Walker. I've got an HOA president here who's trying to enforce some illegal vehicle bans on public streets, and I need someone to come down and shut this nonsense down for good. There was a long pause on the other end, then a chuckle. Karen Brown, huh? Yeah, I've heard about her. We'll be over soon. True to their word, the inspector arrived within the hour. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy, and he was clearly tired of dealing with Karen's crap. I watched as he walked into the HOA office with a determined stride, and I couldn't help but feel a little bit of satisfaction. Karen was about to get a reality check. Sure enough, a few minutes later, the door to the office swung open, and out walked the inspector, shaking his head in disbelief. Karen, of course, looked furious. Ma'am, the inspector said, addressing Karen, you can't ban police vehicles from public streets. That's not only illegal, it's a waste of taxpayer resources. You need to stop this now. Karen wasn't having it. She straightened up and tried to argue, her voice dripping with venom. I don't appreciate being spoken to like that. I am the president of the HOA, and I have the right to enforce these rules. I couldn't resist. No, Karen, you don't. You've been violating city codes left and right, and now you've got someone to answer to. Her face turned pale. She couldn't hide the panic anymore. She was losing control, and she knew it. But instead of backing down, she kept digging herself into a deeper hole. She began sputtering about how she was just trying to keep the neighborhood safe and beautiful. But it was clear that her arguments were falling on deaf ears. The inspector handed her a fine, and as he walked out, he gave me a look that said it all. She's done for, he muttered. I watched as Karen stood there, seething with anger, trying to regain some sense of control. But I knew it was over for her. She had overplayed her hand, and now everyone could see her for what she truly was, a control freak who was willing to destroy a neighborhood to get what she wanted. As I left the HOA office, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Karen was running out of moves. She had no backup, and the whole neighborhood was starting to see through her lies. I had no doubt that this battle was far from over, but for the first time, I felt like I was finally on the winning side. Karen had played all her cards, and now it was my turn to finish this game. And when I did, I was going to make sure she knew exactly who she was messing with. At this point, I knew that Karen wasn't going to quit. I had already exposed her nonsense in front of everyone. Neighbors, officers, the whole HOA. But just when I thought I could finally breathe and enjoy my coffee without worrying about her antics, Karen decided to take things to a whole new level. This woman didn't know when to quit. She was so desperate to control everything that she started doing petty, childish things that only made her look worse. I couldn't help but shake my head as I watched her dig her own grave deeper and deeper. It started small at first, just some scattered trash and leaves near my driveway. Probably one of her loyal followers trying to make my yard look untidy. But soon it escalated. I went out one morning to find eggshells cracked near the tires of my police cruiser. I just stared at it for a minute, trying to figure out what kind of pathetic person would do something like that. Really? Eggs? Is this what you've come to, Karen? I muttered under my breath. The worst part? I knew exactly who was behind it. The handwriting on the notices she'd been leaving on my car was unmistakable. This woman was so obsessed with controlling every aspect of my life that she resorted to vandalism and harassment just to make a point. And it wasn't even a good point. I didn't even have to look at the rest of my driveway to know what was coming next. Sure enough, a few days later, I found a giant HOA violation notice taped to my garage door. It was ridiculous. The notice claimed my police vehicle was once again a violation, and I had 24 hours to remove it or face further action. I couldn't stop myself from laughing. Is this really happening right now? I shook my head in disbelief. You've got to be kidding me, Karen. I could almost hear Karen's voice in my head. This car is an eyesore. It's ruining the aesthetic of the neighborhood. I walked over to my phone and shot off another text to Lee. She's at it again, vandalizing my property and sending fake complaints. What's next? Is she going to start slashing my tires? Lee replied, at this point, she's just embarrassing herself. Keep an eye out for anything else, and if she does anything else stupid, we'll take care of it. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just some petty revenge she was after. No, Karen was weaponizing the city's bureaucracy against me. Over the next few days, I received complaint after complaint from the city. Each one was more ridiculous than the last. First, there was a noise complaint for excessive siren use, even though I hadn't used my sirens once in the last week. Then came a zoning complaint accusing me of running a commercial business from my home because, wait for it, I was a police officer. Apparently, being a cop now counted as operating a business. Does she really think I'm running some sort of criminal empire from my front lawn? I muttered, shaking my head. This woman is unbelievable. I couldn't just ignore it anymore. I needed proof, something concrete to finally shut her down for good. So I did what any smart cop would do. I filed a public records request to get access to the complaint filings. And sure enough, I got exactly what I expected. Every single one of the complaints was anonymous. But the handwriting? That was the kicker. The handwriting was the same on every single complaint. The same perfect, looping cursive that could only belong to one person. Karen. I let out a frustrated sigh. You gotta be kidding me. She's actually doing this. I couldn't let it slide any longer. It was time to make my move. I spent the next day gathering all the evidence. Photos of the vandalism, copies of the fake complaints, the notices she had put on my car, and of course, the handwritten complaints. I had everything I needed to expose her for good. I walked over to the HOA office, my blood boiling with every step. I had no idea how much more I could take of Karen's childish games, but I knew one thing. She was about to pay for every single one of them. When I entered the office, Karen was there, sitting at her desk with that smug expression on her face like she had already won. I walked up to her, slamming the folder full of evidence down our desk. You want to play games, Karen? Fine, let's play. She raised an eyebrow, clearly trying to act like she wasn't rattled. What's this? Another one of your excuses? I didn't waste time. These are your excuses, Karen. All of these complaints came from you. The vandalism on my property? That's your doing too. I've got it all documented. You're about to find out how much trouble you're really in. Her eyes flickered with panic, but she tried to cover it up with more of her usual attitude. You don't know what you're talking about. These complaints are legitimate. You're just upset because I'm doing what's best for the neighborhood. I leaned in, my voice low and cold. No, Karen, I'm upset because you're wasting everyone's time and resources. You've vandalized my property. You've been filing fake complaints to the city. And now you've dragged this whole neighborhood into your petty little vendetta. You're done. Karen's face turned pale, and for the first time, she seemed genuinely scared. But instead of backing down, she tried to push back. You can't do this. I'm the president of this HOA. You're just a cop trying to intimidate me. I crossed my arms, a smug grin creeping onto my face. I'm not the one who's been playing games, Karen, but now I'm the one with the evidence. And trust me, it's all going to come back on you. She stumbled for words, her face contorted in rage and fear. You'll regret this. This isn't over. But I wasn't scared anymore. In fact, I was enjoying every second of it. Oh, I hope not, Karen, because I'm going to make sure this is the end of your little reign of terror. As I turned to walk out of the office, I knew I had her cornered. She had no more moves left, and she was running out of time. All she had left was the choice to admit defeat or dig herself even deeper into the hole she had created. And knowing Karen, she wasn't going to back down quietly. At this point, I honestly couldn't believe what Karen had become. It felt like I was living in some kind of twisted version of reality where common sense just didn't exist. But here we were. Her newest stunt, if you could even call it that, was so ridiculous. I was beginning to wonder if she actually believed she was in some sort of battle for the greater good of the neighborhood. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. I had barely started my morning when my inbox exploded again. Karen had sent out another round of emails to everyone in the neighborhood. This time, she was taking it to the next level. She wasn't just going after me anymore. Oh no, now she was targeting the HOA board, throwing them under the bus. Apparently, the board was not enforcing enough HOA policies, according to Karen. In her twisted mind, they weren't doing their job because they weren't backing her up in her personal war against me. Are you serious? I muttered, staring at the screen. She'd even thrown in some fabricated stories about how the board was weak and lacked leadership. It was clear Karen had lost all sense of reality. She was now painting herself as some martyr who was fighting for the greater good of the entire neighborhood, when in reality, she was making a mockery of herself. I decided to forward the email to Sergeant Lee. Looks like Karen's not only out for me, but now she's coming for the whole HOA board. When does it end? Lee replied almost immediately. At this point, it's like she's trying to burn everything to the ground. She really thinks she's the hero in her own twisted drama. Huh. I couldn't even respond. It was like Karen had completely lost touch with reality. She was playing chess while everyone else was just trying to live their lives, and it was clear she had no idea how much damage she was causing. That's when the next bomb dropped. I was sitting in my living room when I heard the unmistakable sound of my phone buzzing. I picked it up and saw a message from my neighbor, Sarah, one of the more level-headed people in the neighborhood. Michael, just saw Karen's latest email. She's gone off the rails again. You might want to check out what she's trying to pull. I immediately knew it was going to be another one of Karen's ridiculous moves, but this time it was different. I opened the email Sarah had forwarded to me and stared at it in disbelief. Karen had contacted the city directly, demanding they come and enforce her private HOA property rules. She was trying to get the city to force the board to make my police cruiser disappear. It was beyond outrageous. She was now actively trying to weaponize the city government to do her bidding. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I grabbed my phone and texted Lee again. She's trying to get the city involved now. She wants the police to come remove my car. How far is she going to take this? Lee responded quickly. This woman is crazy. If she keeps this up, she'll have the whole city laughing at her. I wasn't laughing. I was getting fed up. Karen's obsession with control had finally hit a tipping point. She wasn't even pretending to fight for neighborhood standards anymore. No, this was about her bruised ego. She couldn't stand the fact that I wasn't bowing down to her self-imposed HOA dictatorship. And what's worse, she was dragging everyone down with her. The HOA board, the city, the neighbors. She was trying to destroy everything just because she couldn't accept losing. I needed to take action before she did something even more ridiculous. So, I decided to escalate things. It wasn't enough to just call her out. No, it was time to hit her where it hurt. I showed up at the HOA office that afternoon, ready to expose Karen once and for all. As soon as I walked in, I could see Karen standing at the desk, looking smug as usual, as if she were some kind of ruler. I knew you'd show up eventually, she sneered, eyes narrowed, like she was somehow in control of the situation. I didn't even bother with pleasantries. Karen, you've made your bed, and now you're going to lie in it. You're the one trying to destroy the neighborhood and drag everyone into your petty little war. But this is where it ends. She rolled her eyes, acting as if I were just some nuisance. I'm doing what's right for the community. You're the one making a mess of things. I was done with her nonsense. No, Karen, you're the one causing all the problems. You've escalated things way past what anyone should tolerate. Now you're involving the city. You crossed the line. Karen's face twisted in anger. You think you've won, don't you? You think just because you're a cop, you can intimidate everyone around you. I crossed my arms. I'm not intimidating anyone. But you? You've been harassing me and trying to turn everyone in this neighborhood against me. You've got everyone in your little cult of HOA minions following your insane ideas. But the rest of us? We're done. Her face turned a deep shade of red. You'll regret this, Michael. You think I'm done? This isn't over. I'll make sure you pay for everything you've done to me. I didn't even flinch. You're the one who's going to pay, Karen. You made so many false claims and harassed so many people that it's only a matter of time before the whole neighborhood sees you for what you really are. Her fists clenched. This isn't over. You'll regret underestimating me. I turned to leave, but before I could walk out, I looked over my shoulder and said, "Oh, Karen, this is over. You just don't know it yet." I knew she wasn't going to back down, but this time I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of watching me panic. Karen had pushed too far, and now it was my turn to make her regret everything. She had to try to burn down the whole neighborhood for her own personal vendetta, and I was done being her punching bag. This was just the beginning, but as far as I was concerned, it was game over for Karen. She had played her cards, and now she was going to pay the price. I had to admit, I didn't think Karen would be dumb enough to try again. After everything she'd done, getting the HOA board against her, filing fake complaints, vandalizing my property, it was clear she was on a path of self-destruction. But apparently, Karen wasn't finished yet. No, she had one final move in her twisted game. It all started with a ridiculous email that popped up in my inbox. This time, Karen had gone full-on petty. She wasn't just complaining about my police cruiser anymore. Oh no, now she had decided to take it upon herself to send out a whole new round of neighborhood-wide notices. She was accusing me of threatening the community with my presence and violating HOA property rights by parking in front of my own house, as if I was some kind of criminal for simply existing. I read through the email and couldn't stop myself from laughing. Threatening the community? Really, Karen? The only thing threatening around here is your complete lack of common sense. I shot a quick text to Lee. Looks like Karen's still at it. She's sending out more ridiculous notices about me violating HOA rules. What's next? Is she going to try and ban my shadow from the neighborhood? Lee didn't even hesitate in his response. She's lost it. At this point, it's just sad. I couldn't agree more. But I also knew that if I didn't shut this down now, she'd only keep pushing the envelope. So, I decided it was time to confront her one last time. The next day, I walked over to the HOA office, my mind set on ending this madness once and for all. As soon as I walked in, I could feel the tension in the air. There she was, sitting behind her desk with that smug little smile, acting like she was the queen of the world. "You again," Karen sneered, eyeing me like I was some kind of nuisance. "What now, Officer Walker? Didn't I already tell you that your presence here is a violation?" I just shook my head. "Karen, you really think I'm going to let you continue with this? You've already made a fool of yourself so many times, and now you're sending out these ridiculous emails to the whole neighborhood. Do you have any idea how many people you've pissed off?" She crossed her arms, clearly not backing down. "I'm doing what's best for the neighborhood. You're the one who's ruining everything. You think you're above everyone else just because you're a cop. Well, guess what? You're not." I almost couldn't contain my laughter. "Right, Karen. I'm the one ruining the neighborhood, not the woman who's been making everyone's life miserable for months. You're so delusional at this point. I'm not sure how you don't see it. Karen's face flushed with anger, but she wasn't ready to back down. I won't let you walk all over me anymore. You'll regret this. Oh, I already regret ever trying to be nice to you. I shot back. But here's the thing. You've been attacking me, my property, and my job for no reason other than your own twisted sense of control. And now, you've dragged the whole neighborhood into your mess. You think people are still on your side? They're not. You've alienated everyone. She scoffed. Don't talk to me like that. You don't understand. I'm protecting this neighborhood from people like you. I raised an eyebrow. Protecting the neighborhood? From a police officer? Are you serious? You made a mockery of the HOA, the city, and the whole neighborhood. You're the one who's been harassing me, vandalizing my property, making false claims, dragging everyone into your little war. And for what? Because I parked my car in my own driveway. Karen's jaw clenched, and she stood up, her face twisted in fury. This isn't over, Michael. You think you've won, but you're wrong. I'll make sure you pay for this. I shook my head. You've been saying that for months, Karen. But here's the truth. You're not going to win. You've already lost. Everyone can see exactly who you are. You're the problem here, not me. And at this point, I'm done playing your games. Her face turned an unhealthy shade of red. I won't stop. I'll keep fighting until I get what I want. I couldn't help but feel sorry for her. You're not fighting for anything, Karen. You're fighting for your ego. And guess what? No one cares anymore. You pushed everyone too far. She stared at me, eyes burning with rage. You'll regret this. You'll regret ever crossing me. I sighed, shaking my head. I already regret wasting 1 minute of my time on you. But now I'm done. The only thing you're going to regret is continuing this ridiculous war that you've already lost. I turned to leave, but Karen's voice followed me. You haven't heard the last of me, Michael. I'll make sure you regret this. I didn't even bother responding. Karen's threats had no weight anymore. She was a joke, and she had no idea how badly she had already destroyed herself. I knew the end was near, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Her delusions had blinded her to the truth. The only thing she was fighting for now was her own defeat, and I was more than happy to let her keep digging herself deeper.